I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This is Genesis Does, and what is the first book of the Bible? Genesis. So why don't we take a look at Bible adventures today? Or more specifically, Noah's Ark from Bible Adventures, released in 1995 by Wisdom Tree. Wisdom Tree is a company you may know from their baby blue NES cartridges that were sold exclusively in Christian bookstores. The reason why they were sold that way is because they were unlicensed games that Nintendo neither authorized nor wanted to exist on their console, and this was actually the second iteration of the company Wisdom Tree, originally called Color Dreams. They had the exact same problem getting their games into retail stores because those stores were afraid of reprisals from Nintendo, or if they carried unlicensed games, they wouldn't get shipments of legitimate games from Nintendo. So why would you take a risk for a Color Dreams game that may or may not sell very well when you wanted Super Mario 3 and Metroid and all those games that were official Nintendo games, and you wouldn't get supplies of them because you dared to break Nintendo's licensing arrangement? It wasn't worth it. Whereas when they rebranded as a biblical game publisher, and a lot of their games were just reskinned from Color Dreams games into Bible games, they figured, well, Nintendo's not going to go after these Christian bookstores, so these retailers will take the games even if other people won't, because they're not selling other hedonistic, violent video games. They're only going to sell biblical games, so they don't have to worry about not getting Nintendo games because they were never going to begin with. Once Wisdom Tree started having success with this arrangement, selling their games to Christian bookstores, they expanded from NES to other platforms. Naturally, that leads to what you see here, Noah's Ark, on this 3-in-1 Bible Adventures cartridge for Sega Genesis, but it's basically an iteration of a game they did on Nintendo with very minimal improvements to the graphics. I suppose technically we can consider this Genesis Does what Nintendo don't, because it's not on the comparable 16-bit platform. There's no Super Nintendo version of this. There is a Nintendo, but not a Super Nintendo version, so apples to apples, 16-bit to 16-bit, it doesn't compare. But when you compare the 16-bit to the 8-bit, it's not that much better. You'd think given the NES version came out in 1991 and the Genesis version came out in 1995, they would have learned a thing or two. But if you notice any screen tearing or glitches in this game, it's not the fault of my recording. It's the way the game is made. They had a basic competence in programming and were able to get so far with it, and that's about it. Like, for example, you'll notice that a horse gets stuck in the ground here. That's not the fault of emulation. It does that no matter which way you play this game. Play it on an original Sega Genesis, you're going to see that. Play it on the Analog Mega SG, you're going to see that. It's the way the game was made. Everything that looks wrong or bad here is the way the game was made. If you don't know the NES version of this, I'll explain it very briefly for you. You're trying to collect all the animals for the ark, 2 by 2, just like the Bible says, so that you can sail off with all of the animals of the earth before the Great Flood and save them from extinction. The game provides a helpful checklist, so each time you put one in the ark, it shows you which ones you haven't captured yet. And there are some interesting puzzles to catching certain animals. For example, the pigs are slippery and will just run away if you try to pick them up. So you have to lure them with food. You can find it in the trees and pick it up. And when you carry it around, the pigs follow you. And when you drop it, they start eating it, at which point you can pick them up. There's also a monkey that hides in the trees and throws nuts at you. So you have to pick up the nut it throws, and when it hits the ground, you throw the nut back at it. If you knock the monkey over, he flips upside down. Then you can pick him up and carry him back to the ark. So even with the bugs, even with the screen tearing and the limited amount of visual appeal here, there's a lot of brown, not any kind of parallax scrolling, no background music. It's pretty primitive, but at least I can say, I'm being somewhat generous by saying this, but there is some fun to be had here. If it wasn't skinned as a Bible game and it was just a game where you had to solve puzzles to collect animals, it would be the same game. There's nothing here inherently Christian that really makes this stand out as, oh, this is such an excellent game. It will teach my children true Christian values. No, I don't think they're learning that from this game. Even though they stuck proverbs on little stone tablets and you can pick them up and read them, I doubt that's really going to work. Kids are just going to gloss over that as fast as they can, and they just want to get all the animals in the ark as fast as they can. And so do I, for that matter. But to my dismay, when I did capture all the animals and I thought I was done, it gave me a brand new checklist and expected me to start over and do it all again. And at that point, I'd had my fill of Noah's Ark. It's like, fine, I solved your little challenges. I learned how to get the pig. I learned how to get the monkey. I learned where the snake was hiding. I did all these things. I even found the stupid cow. There was one cow on my checklist that just defied me as to where it was. And it was actually in the ark itself, on the very top deck of the ship. Like, why is the cow hanging out up there? And why didn't I just put it in the hold if it was already in the ark to begin with? But you ask logical questions in a game like this, and you're just asking for trouble. So you just pick up the cow and put it in the hold. It goes moo, and you put it in there, and you're done. But then you're not done, because it gives you a whole new set of animals you have to collect. And I said, no thank you, sir. I will not be doing that today. I appreciate your generous offer, but I have had my fill of Noah's Ark, because Noah's Ark is filled with all of the animals you asked me to get. So don't expect me to start over and do this whole shebang again, because today is not the day, I am not the one, and there are much better Sega Genesis games to play. Now don't get me wrong, this is far from the worst thing to exist on any platform, NES, Genesis, or otherwise. The graphics may be overly simple, the sound design may be overly minimal, but it is at least playable, it works, it's not completely broken. This isn't like the Action 52 on NES, where some of the games wouldn't even boot up and others were completely unbeatable. At least the game works and is a playable game. So if you're going to give Wisdom Tree credit for anything, give them credit for that much. It may not be great, but it works. And on that basis alone, I can quasi-recommend it. I'm not getting into depth on Bible Adventures today and playing the other two games, but you could argue there's value there with 3 different games, even though the 3 games have you completing the same objectives. It's the same game engine recycled 3 times to make 3 different games. So really you could consider it one game with 3 chapters if you wanted to. Well, you can call it 3 separate games. I don't care. It doesn't bother me one way or the other what you want to consider it to be, but if you get the gameplay of Noah's Ark, you already get the gameplay of the other 2 games, because you're going to be picking up stuff, carrying stuff, and taking stuff places. Whether it's a baby, or a goat, or a cow, doesn't matter. You pick stuff up, you take it places. At this point, the only other thing I have to tell you about it is how much it sells for. $32 loose, $140 complete, $265 new and sealed. And I can't fathom that. I would not pay that for this game, loose, complete, or otherwise. But if you're a Genesis collector and you have to have a complete collection, including unlicensed games, that's what you're going to be spending on Bible Adventures. But I more or less recommend that you play this in emulation, get your fill of it for a limited amount of time, then delete the ROM and move on to something else. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This is Genesis Does. We have new content every day and new episodes of this series every Thursday, so stop in again and watch more content. We will always have something new here for you. I'm Mr. MegaManFan, and this is Genesis Does. Imagine, if you will, for a moment, that instead of being an indie darling of the 2010s, Golf Story was a game released in the 1990s exclusively on the Sega Mega Drive. Now, further compound that by imagining that the plot of this version of Golf Story would be a mad scientist is kidnapping female golfers in an attempt to take over the world. Then you have the plot of Battle Golfer Yui, which could be said to be one of the strangest games we've ever played here on Genesis Does, but I think we played a lot of strange games, so maybe not the strangest ever, but certainly somewhere up there in the top 10. And this opening plot that you're watching should give you a pretty good indication of what I'm talking about. I fired this up thinking it would be some sort of golf game with maybe some sort of role-playing element to it. I didn't expect this, and then I looked it up on Wikipedia and found out, oh, yeah, this is really insane. This is more than just competitive, fast-paced golf. Like, Battle Golfer Yui makes you think you're going head-to-head playing, per stroke, per match, per hole. But no, you are really battling here. You are battling the forces of evil with a machine gun in your hands and a half-dressed woman behind you. This is really battle golf. Wow. I can think of about 100 reasons this game would have never been localized for the West, just based on the last cutscene alone. But if it's going to be a very plot-driven role-playing game entirely in Japanese, how am I even going to play Battle Golfer Yui without a patch? I sat there and pondered this for a moment, but then when the cutscenes were over and it came up to the main menu, it offered me two options: story mode or golf mode. Yes. Okay, I'll take the match play mode, thank you very much. Let's play some golf. I don't think I'll get very far in the other mode, and I'm not even sure I want to. Not just because it's beyond insane, but because it scores very poorly when you read the reviews that do exist, and there aren't many, but one gave it a score of 17 out of 40 and called it not good. So I guess either on the standard of a role-playing game or a golf game or any combination of the two, the story mode of Battle Golfer Yui isn't that great. Then again, it could just be so bad it's campy and fun. And I can't say that I totally hated the golf-only mode that it offered, because I can see, even without a patch, that all of the basic elements of a golf game that you would want on a home console are there. You don't even have to translate anything here. You hit the very first option at the top, and it lets you select your club, and then if you scroll over to the right, once you select your club, it says go, and that's when you can hit the ball, you aim it, you use the power bar to hit it as hard as you want to. I've never been able to get it perfectly timed all the way to the top of the bar, but then with these holes, I think you would overshoot most of the greens if you did go to the full top of the bar anyway, so that's, I guess, my only big complaint about playing the golf mode of Battle Golfer Yui is the power gauge is very difficult to control. You can't get it all the way to the top, and you can't get it all the way to the bottom, so you either undershoot or overshoot most of the times that you're aiming for something. If there was a way to slow it down or finesse it a little more, I could appreciate it a little better. I mean, yeah, it's kind of nutty that this golf hole is on a baseball diamond, but some of the other ones you play are perfectly normal golf course holes, and the only problem is that you just don't have enough control over the power of your shot. I think one way to solve this problem, this is just me spitballing as I do this voiceover, but one way to solve it would be show you the distance the ball would travel based on your club selection. Like, if you select a different club and it shows the maximum possible with the full power bar that you could reach, then you might select a different club and go for the full power of that. Another way they could do it is to give you an indicator of yards like on the power bar, if it said like you hit this at this strength, it's 50 yards, you hit this at this strength, it's 100 yards, so on and so forth, then you could go for that specific bar as it's moving up and down, and that would be hitting it the distance that you wanted. Or it could even, if they were skilled enough to program in this feature, it could auto select on the power bar the distance that you should go for, so you wouldn't even have to number it individually for each different range. It could put on the power bar how far away you are from the hole, like aim for this spot on the power bar because that's how far you need to hit it to reach the hole. That would have worked. Any of those solutions would have been better than the way it controls here. And I don't know if that could be the reasons for the low scores, or again, it could be the totally insane plot of the game, mixing golf with a mad scientist. I can't translate the Japanese in the review, so I'll take their word for it when they say it's not good. It certainly is interesting, though. I have to give it that. Battle Golfer Yui stands out among Japanese Mega Drive games I've played on Genesis does. There's nothing quite like it. Again, Golf Story was the only thing I could think of. So maybe this can be considered a precursor to Golf Story, but Golf Story does every part of this in so much easier and more enjoyable of a fashion. It's so much easier to play the golf parts. It's so much easier to enjoy the role-playing parts. Even if it was in Japanese, I think it would probably be more enjoyable. I don't know if they localized Golf Story for Japan. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I'm not an expert on that subject. I do know I would rather play GALF Golf, the game that they spun off from Golf Story and released on its own physical cartridge for Nintendo. I would rather play that than play this version of Golf on Battle Golfer Yui. It could be better. If somebody could hack it and program in the kind of features I was talking about, that would be great. Another one that I would add if I was adding things, as long as we're spitballing here, an easier way to read the greens, because there's clearly some uphill, downhill, and curve to these greens, but either that's not included in these menus or I don't know how to access these menus. I can't figure it out because I try to hit the ball hard enough to roll in the hole and it always seems to curve left or curve right. So you've got to be able to read the green some way. And they don't put anything on the screen that indicates it. Like in some of these old school golf games, if you need to read the green, there will be arrows on the green. Like it'll show you it's rolling to the right here because the arrow will point to the right, or it's rolling downhill because there's an arrow up that's pointing away from the cup. So you know to aim in a specific direction and use a specific amount of power based on the curves of the green thanks to the arrows on the screen. There's none of that here. So your guess is as good as mine. And only I can think if there's an English patch, and Ryan Taylor's probably already looking at romhacking.net as I speak. If there's an English patch, maybe there's an option, a sub-menu option that lets you read the green. But I think they could have just put it on the green in the visual display. It's already a top-down view to begin with, so why would you even need to change the perspective in a sub-menu? You could just put it on the screen. We're already not in the realm of reality here. We're playing golf from a helicopter. Like you'd want to play it any other way, really. I mean, I don't think I want to play from a first-person perspective in any golf game ever, but I'm just saying, if it's already not real, why not go further into unreality and show you the things that you need to know instead of making you guess blindly and hope that you can putt it in and you end up getting a triple bogey because you can't sink a 2-foot putt because the green is sloped that severely. Even some topographical data, like if it had valleys and hills in the display, like if it showed you that the green wasn't just flat and even all the way across, then you could at least sort of read the lie of the green and know whether you're hitting it too hard or not hard enough, or aiming it in the right direction to follow the curve of the lie of the green. And there's just no topographical data on the screen whatsoever. So you're completely bereft of any useful data that can help you improve your tap in and your short game, as they say in golf. You know, the long game is when you drive it to go all the way to the hole. The short game is when you're at the actual cup trying to putt it in. And for me, I'm definitely better at the long game than the short game in Battle Golfer Yui, because I can at least drive it, not necessarily with as much finesse as I would like given the power bar, but the short game absolutely stinks on here without being able to read the damn greens. Ay, 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 ay. Well, Battle Golfer Yui. It exists. It is a thing. It got 17 out of 40 from Famitsu or whatever Japanese magazine it was that reviewed it, and I think it deserved it. But as a matter of curiosity, load this one up on an EverDrive or fire it up in an emulator, mess around with it for a little bit, maybe even find an English language patch. Ryan will probably tell me that one is available, and then I will go back and try that story mode and see if it's just as campy as the opening movie cinematic makes me believe it is. I'm sure it is. I just don't know if this is the kind of thing that you should go out and spend your hard-earned money to import, or if you live in Japan, go to Super Potato and buy a loose or complete copy of. I just don't know that unless you're trying to complete a Mega Drive collection, that this can be considered a must-own title. It's a curiosity. It's a novelty. It will amuse you for a short amount of time, and then you'll want to play something much better. There are better golf games on Genesis. There are better golf games on Mega Drive. There are better games, period, on either console. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This has been Genesis Does. We have new episodes every Thursday. Come back and see us again, and come back for new content daily. Bye for now. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This is Genesis Does, and today we are looking at Robot Wreckage, which is an early build of a game that, when finally released by Novotrade in 1993, had its name changed to Cyborg Justice. Now, regardless of which version of the game you play, the plot is essentially the same. You are the sole survivor of a ship that crash-landed on a mining colony, although the word survivor may be inaccurate because your brain was harvested from your body and put into a cyborg shell to keep it alive. So basically it's a RoboCop plot where there's nothing left of the body except for the brain, and the brain is put into a body whether the person who was found that way wanted it that way or not. In the full version of the game, your protagonist Cyborg can actually pick up the parts of the other robots it's fighting and add them onto its body as upgrades. But in this version, you're only allowed to do that from the beta menu. You can go into the options and change what weapons and legs and other things you're equipped with, but in the actual gameplay, you can't pick up parts of the robots you wreck and use them for yourself. Robot Wreckage seems a fitting title, but I guess they thought Cyborg Justice sounded sexier, so they went with the latter when they finally released it. And it got a wide release. North America, European Union, Australia. I think this game came out pretty much everywhere. Except, interestingly enough, Japan. That may be because Novotrade was based out of Hungary with branches in the United States, and as such they never developed nor intended a game for the Japanese market. So this would have been reverse localized. Instead of going from Japanese to English, it would have had to have gone from English to Japanese, and if they didn't see enough of a market for it, why would they bother to do that? Now, if you don't know the name Novotrade, you might know them by their latter name, Appaloosa Interactive. They developed a couple of Contra games for PlayStation, games that are largely forgotten and not even recognized as part of the canon if you get the Contra collection for PlayStation 4 Xbox, Nintendo Switch, whatever, those games aren't even referenced or brought up. But I don't think they're such terrible games. Maybe they don't reflect the joy of playing Contra 3 or the original Contra or Operation C on the Game Boy, but I don't think they suck. Certainly not like the last Contra game that officially got released, which I would say is way worse. I mean, playing as a panda bear, come on now. I'm getting off topic here. What I'm trying to tell you is that I think those games have been given a bad rap, and I would say that Appaloosa slash Novotrade has largely been forgotten since they ceased operations in 2006. Their last game was a Jaws game, and since then, they have not been heard from. Getting back to Robot Wreckage, though, you can see some of the early promise that this game had before it was turned into Cyborg Justice. The side-scrolling beat-em-up belt action is not the best, not the worst. It's Double Dragon-esque. I get that very same feeling of playing Double Dragon where when you're moving your protagonist from left to right and you've got a small window of area to move up and down on the screen, you can kind of bully your enemies into corners and beat them up until they fly off the screen, or you can change your position on the axis and make them come up to you and punch. You can punch your way through them before they can get to you, or you can avoid their attacks by hitting them before they get to you and then moving down or up again. So it can be a little bit repetitive. Repetitive doesn't necessarily mean bad, but this game obviously needed some additional features to really become a full-fledged game to sell at retail. As mentioned, the upgradable ability to customize your cyborg was one of those features. They were clearly working on it at the time this beta was released, but they hadn't implemented it into the actual gameplay. Some greater variety of moves would also be appreciated. You've got a jump button and 2 attack buttons, but basically you're just punching and kicking, and if you get a bonus move, it seems to be almost at random. Like, sometimes you can pick someone up and throw them, but I don't ever seem to be able to do it on purpose. It's not like a pro wrestling game where you initiate a grapple and then you hit a combo to do something once you're grappling, like pick them up and slam them. It would be nice if there was that sort of system here, but either it wasn't implemented yet or it doesn't exist, period. And there's also a drop kick, coincidentally enough, speaking of pro wrestling moves, but I never seem to be able to hit the robot enemies with my drop kick. They always are too far away or get out of the way by the time it actually executes, so the timing on it sucks. Don't even bother with the dropkick. You do that by jumping and attacking at the same time. Push both buttons, you'll throw a dropkick. Will it land? Not bloody likely. If you could grapple your opponents and do moves to them, if you could execute special moves with a button combo, that would be great. If the 6 buttons were used, that would be great, but this was clearly designed with a 3-button controller in mind, so there's no extra options for doing blocks or getting special moves off. You just have to work with what you're given, and sometimes that's fine, and sometimes that outright sucks. And one of the times it sucks is when you face the 3rd robot on any stage. There are 3 different kinds of robots in this beta, and there are only 4 stages in total, and they always seem to go in the same order. The first one you can just beat up right away. The second one is a little more crafty and will try to move away from some of your strikes. And the third one is just downright cruel, because whenever you try to throw a punch, he'll immediately step out of the way. And if you get in front of him at the wrong time and he fires off his laser, it's pretty much death instantly. Like, you can't block it, you can't get up before he fires it again. You're just going to get pounded by the laser repeatedly until you're dead, dead, dead. So do yourself a favor when you fight the 3rd robot. If it's the same way in the full game, then take this for that advice. But in this demo, this is definitely what you do when you face the 3rd robot. Never, ever stay in front of him. Use that vertical axis. Move up, let him come to you. If you get off a strike, great. If you don't, move back down, let him come to you. Do the same thing again. Don't ever stay in front of him for more than a second, because if he gets off that laser, you lose the fight. And doing that enough times, I finally got to the point where I beat it, and then the game immediately cut back to the beta screen with all of the options. Like, it didn't even let me celebrate my victory. It just dumped me back to the menu. Well, that's unrewarding. Thanks a lot. But it's a beta, so what can you expect? That's just it. I mean, it's a beta. This was not meant to be the final version of the game, so obviously they didn't bother to program any victory into the game. Although they did program the ability to play back and record your footage. I guess they thought for review purposes, whoever they sent this beta to might actually need to re-watch their gameplay footage. So in that beta menu, you can actually hit record, play a stage, and you go back to the menu and hit playback, and it remembers all of your button inputs and recreates everything that you just did. That's very unusual for a game of the time. Very forward thinking by Novo Trade. I don't know if that feature made its way into Cyborg Justice, but if you've played this game before and you know that it does exist there, please leave your comments below the video and let me know. Ryan, Bjorn, Billy, I'm looking at you guys. One of you may have played this before. I had never played either version of it before the making of this video, and it's kind of surprising that I don't own a physical copy of Cyborg Justice, given that it's not a ridiculously expensive game. $9 loose, $20 complete. If it's even marginally better than this demo version as Robot Wreckage, I think that would probably be a justifiable purchase. I would enjoy playing Cyborg Justice with the upgradable robot, the side-scrolling belt action fighting, having some actual combo moves that you could do. I can see the potential here. They had something here with Robot Wreckage. It's a good start. It just needed more polish, maybe a little more variety in music, more special moves that you can do instead of just randomly giving them to you without any choice in the matter. I see what they're going for here. Novo Trade, you were on the road to something, and I hope the final product turned out even better. I'm going to have to pick it up sometime and find out. I don't even know where I picked up this ROM, because I checked and hiddenpalace.org doesn't have the beta of Cyborg Justice. I looked, it didn't exist. Or my search engine wasn't working properly and it didn't come up, but I did not see a beta version of Cyborg Justice at Hidden Palace, and nearly every beta Genesis game that I've ever played before on this channel came from Hidden Palace, so I can't explain it. Where did I get this mystery beta from? Somebody somewhere had a copy of it, and it ended up in a zip folder, and I opened the zip folder, and there it was, along with some of the other betas I played. Maybe somebody who worked at Novo Trade purposefully leaked the beta version so people could see what they had worked on. You know how programmers are. They like to take credit for the things they've done. They don't like to be anonymous, and if they worked on something, sometimes they'll purposefully leak it years after the game is no longer on the market, and they can't be accused of hurting the commercial value. Like, does anybody think either version of this, Robot Wreckage or Cyborg Justice, has huge commercial value in 2021? It doesn't even have huge reseller value, because again, it only goes for $9 loose and 20 complete, so nobody's clamoring for Cyborg Justice. There's not any cartoon or movie based on this. There's no comic book tie-in. There's nothing here that keeps someone from going, hey, I worked on this game, I'll dump this game, I'll put it out on the internet and let people try what I worked on for so many years from this company based out of Hungary. Yeah, I can see somebody doing that. I see no reason why they wouldn't do that. I'd probably do that in their shoes too. I'd be like, yeah, go ahead and play the beta. It's not going to hurt my feelings whether you buy the full game or not. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This has been Genesis Does. Thanks for watching.